Today, I'm going to share with you 3 progressively more disturbing stories, and at the end of each of them, I'm going to share with you the video that is famously associated with them. But before I get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel because that's all I do, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to make the like button a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but employ a 6-to-1 peanut butter to jelly ratio. Also, please subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. In June of 2015, 30-year-old mother of 2, Lisa McKenzie, lived in what she called a safe neighborhood in Bridgend, Wales. One day when she was cleaning up her kids' toys in her backyard, she noticed something strange about her back door. She thought maybe one of her kids had taken paint and slapped it across the back door, or perhaps it was even mud. But then when she walked up to the door itself, she could tell that there were 2 very deep gouges in the door right next to the locking mechanism. Also, the key portion of the lock had loads of scratches all over it. Initially, she thought maybe these have been here the whole time and I just haven't noticed them until right now. But when she looked at the 2 gouge marks in the door, they looked fresh. Since she did not own a dog and didn't know of any other dogs in the area that might come into her property that could have scratched up the door, she figures, okay, it's gotta be my kids. So she calls her kids outside and she points at the marks on the door, and the kids swear they didn't do it. And they say, I don't remember ever seeing that. That's new. At this point, Lisa has this sinking feeling that someone must have tried to break into our house. But she doesn't want to scare her kids, so she tells them to go back in the house. They go inside and she's standing in front of the door and she's just looking at the marks thinking like, what do I do? And she notices in the bushes right next to the door, there's something silver sitting in the bush. She bent down and picked up a wire that she immediately recognized as a windshield wiper insert because she had recently had to replace her windshield wipers because one of the inserts was missing. She also noticed this wire that was very rigid had been bent up at the end like a hook. And it was at this point that Lisa went from maybe someone's trying to break in to definitely someone just tried to break in. They're using the wire from my windshield to try to defeat the lock. Lisa didn't make much money, but with the money she did have, she went out and got the most expensive, sophisticated surveillance camera that she could put on the back of her house to monitor that back door. And in addition to the camera, starting that night, Lisa began compulsively checking every door, every lock, every window, everything that could secure the house. She would check 3, 4, 5 times before going to bed every single night. And then the next morning, she would get up and she would review the footage from the night before. And for the next several weeks, no one tried to break into her house. There was no suspicious activity recorded on the camera. Everything was normal. Until Monday, July 13th, when she woke up and noticed her back gate, not her door, but the gate leading into her yard, was slightly open. Now, because she was obsessively checking every door, every window, every lock, that included that gate. Meaning the night before, she had triple checked that that gate was shut and locked. So for it to be open right now meant something had happened the night before. And so without even going outside, she goes right to her security camera footage, and she would say that what she saw made her physically ill. Earlier that morning at 1:15 a.m., an unknown man wearing a rain jacket and gloves walks up to the back of their house and puts his hands and his face right up against the window and starts looking in the window. And then he steps back, pulls a flashlight out, and starts looking in the kitchen with his flashlight, just brazenly looking in the house. And at some point, he puts the flashlight down and looks up and clearly notices the camera that she has installed. He looks at it for a minute and then just kind of shrugs and goes right back to shining his light into the kitchen before going around to the door itself and trying the door and fidgeting with the door to open it. It was locked. He goes to the window, he tries to open the window, it's locked, and he would make his way down the side of the house trying to open all of the windows until walking around to the back side of the house where there wasn't the camera. And then when he couldn't open any of the windows or doors because Lisa was diligent about locking everything, he must have just given up and left. Lisa's horrified. She gets in touch with police. She shows them the footage, but unfortunately, his face was kind of obscured in the video, and so they were never able to identify him. Here are the highlights from Lisa's security footage. On September 8th, 2017, 19-year-old Kanika Jenkins, along with her 3 friends, were driving to the Crown Plaza Hotel in Chicago, Illinois. It was a Friday night, and the girls had been invited to a big birthday party on the 9th floor of the hotel. They arrived at the hotel around 11 p.m., and by the time they got up to room 926, the room was packed with their friends, the music was loud, and the drinks were flowing. A few hours into the party, a witness would tell police that when they went up to give Kanika a hug, she could barely stand, she was so intoxicated. Another witness said when everybody was up, dancing and having a great time, Kanika was sitting on the side of the room, apparently too drunk to even stand up. At about 3 a.m., Kanika and the 3 friends she had showed up with decided it was time to leave the party and head home. So they make their way into the hall, security cameras would pick them up in the hall, they go down to the lobby, and that's when Kanika realizes she doesn't have her car keys or her phone. Her friends, who were not nearly as intoxicated as Kanika, told her to stay in the lobby. They would go back up to the hotel room and look for her things. Her friends go back upstairs, they search the room for a few minutes, and they finally find her purse that had her cell phone and her keys in it. They go back down to the lobby, and Kanika's not there. Now, they assumed she must have already left the hotel and was waiting at the car for them, but when they got to the car, she wasn't there. So they all pile into the car, and they call Kanika's mother, and they say, hey, we just left this party, and I think everything's fine, but we can't find Kanika, and we have her phone, and we have her keys. And they explained that they had left the party, and she'd lost them, and that she was down in the lobby, and now she wasn't here anymore. And Kanika's mom wanted to know, were you guys drinking? And it was clear the friends were a little bit cagey about it. And they said, oh no, maybe a drink or two, but I'm sure she's fine. Everything's just fine. And Kanika's mom just felt like there's something off here. It's the middle of the night. You don't know where my daughter is. And so she said she was coming to the hotel and she was going to find Kanika. Kanika's mom arrives at the hotel around 5 a.m. And the first thing she does is she goes in and talks to the front desk manager and says, hey, my daughter was here. They were having a party up on the 9th floor and her friends can't find her. I'm sure she's fine, but would you mind using the security footage to show us where she went? Because we don't know if she left the hotel or if she's still here. Would you mind showing us the footage? And the hotel was totally unhelpful. They were like, well, we can't show it to you unless there's an official missing person report, which, by the way, is a complete fabrication. That's not true. They could have showed it to her. They just didn't want to. And so they told her, sorry, you're going to have to file a missing person report. And so obviously Kanika's mother is very frustrated and she just wants to find her daughter. So she leaves the hotel and she calls police. And she asks them, can you please come down to this hotel and get them to show us the security footage because we can't find my daughter. The police were willing to help, but they viewed this as, your daughter was at a party, she's probably with her friends somewhere, she's bound to show up, she probably went to another room, and they advised her that she should just wait a couple of hours, see if your daughter turns up, and if she doesn't, call us back. Kanika's mom is now doubly frustrated that there's no one who's going to help her, and so she decides that she's going to search for her daughter on her own. And so she goes back into the hotel and she goes up to the 9th floor and she begins going room to room, knocking on every single door and seeing if Kanika is inside or if anybody knows anything about Kanika. And so for hours, her mom goes room by room, floor by floor, and is getting nowhere until at 1:15 p.m., this is now 10 hours after Kanika left the party and vanished, the hotel finds out Kanika's mom is going door to door, and they call the police on her and say she needs to leave. She's trespassing now. Police show up to deal with Kanika's mother, who sees the police and says, can you please just ask them to show you the security footage? My daughter's been missing for 10 hours now. I have her phone. I can't get in touch with her. And the police say, okay, fine. They go to the front desk. They say, show us the security footage. They show them the footage, but it's just the exits of the hotel. And they see Kanika going inside, but they don't see anybody leaving. And I guess that was enough for the police and the hotel. And they said, hey, we did our job. She apparently is still in the hotel somewhere, but we can't help you anymore. And no one looked anymore at the footage. And so Kanika's mom is once again now not even allowed to be in the hotel, and no one's reviewing the footage. And so she's got nothing she can do. Police would go back, though, that night at 10 p.m., so 17 hours after Kanika has gone missing, to review the footage again. And they start sifting through other footage beyond just the exits, and they discover Kanika stumbling through the hotel at 3:20 in the morning. She leaves the lobby and makes her way downstairs to the basement. She walks down the hall and can barely stand, and she goes into the kitchen. And then when she's in the kitchen, she kind of stumbles through the kitchen and then vanishes out of sight. When the police are not able to see Kanika on any other camera after she goes into the kitchen, They decide to just go down to the kitchen and look for her in there. And so at 12:48 a.m. on Sunday now, this is almost 24 hours after she's gone missing, they discover Kanika. She had stumbled into a walk-in freezer that was left open for reasons we don't know, and then once inside, she had accidentally shut the door, but she was too drunk to open it up again, and she froze to death. Although Kanika's death was ultimately ruled an accident, one could make the case that had the hotel allowed Kanika's mother to review the footage just 2 hours after Kanika went missing, perhaps she would have found the footage that led them to the kitchen. They could have gone down and found her before she froze to death, but we'll never know. Here is the final footage of Kanika stumbling through the hotel before she ultimately landed in the freezer. In the early 1970s, a man named Marshall Applewhite was fired from his music teaching job for having an inappropriate relationship with a male student. Shortly after, he admitted himself into a psychiatric institution where he met a nurse who worked there named Bonnie Nettles. Both had a deep interest in biblical prophecy, and Applewhite, after meeting Nettles, was convinced they had met in a previous life. Nettles agreed and took it a step further, saying extraterrestrials had come to her and preordained that she would someday meet Applewhite. The two did not have a romantic relationship at all. It was strictly platonic. They bonded over a desire to ascend to a higher level of existence and ultimately reach the kingdom of heaven. Applewhite began calling himself Bo, and Nettles became Peep, and together they would start an infamous cult known as Heaven's Gate. The premise of Heaven's Gate was that an alien spacecraft that they simply called the UFO was going to come to Earth and whisk away Heaven's Gate cult members, elevating them to a new world and a better life that they referred to as Tela, or the evolutionary level above human. There was a catch though. Anybody on Earth who did not get on the UFO whenever it got here would be recycled, i.e. destroyed, along with everybody else on Earth. And then at some point a new human population would grow and another UFO would come, and whoever got on that would be saved over and over and over again. That was just how it worked. And Bo and Peep were telling everyone they talked to about Heaven's Gate that we're already in end times. Apparently there were signs that this UFO is going to be here any day. And so now is the time to join the cult. And so by 1975, Bo and Peep had recruited 20 people to be a part of their cult, which meant they gave up their families, they gave up their possessions, they basically gave up everything in their life and moved to Colorado to live in total poverty as they waited for this UFO to arrive. For 10 years, cult members waited and waited for this UFO that never showed up. And Bo and Peep are aggressively reminding people that this is the path, you just gotta stay the path. And then Peep unexpectedly died of cancer in 1985, which really screwed things up for the cult. In their doctrine, it was destiny that Bo and Peep would get on that UFO and make their way to Tela, the evolutionary level above human. That was their destiny. And now Peep has died on planet Earth. She did not get on the UFO. She did not ascend to Tela. She will not get to Heaven's Gate. Bo was devastated and horribly depressed, and it wasn't really clear what was going to happen to Heaven's Gate. But he composed himself and he began to tweak his messaging a little bit. Bo began telling his followers that Peep had in fact ascended to Tela. Yes, she did not get on the UFO. However, the aliens must have given her a signal that if she leaves behind this human body, this mere vessel, you'll still ascend to Tela. Basically, he was preaching to them, if you just end your own life at the right moment, you can go to Tela too. But Bo didn't really know what the right moment was. He didn't know what the trigger was going to be. Until 1995, when astronomers discovered the Hale-Bopp comet was going to be passing by Earth 2 years later in 1997. And Bo saw this as the trigger. The UFO was going to be hiding behind the trail of this comet, and for sure, Peep was riding on that UFO, and as soon as it passes by Earth, we need to ascend. And so fast forward to March 26, 1997, as the Hale-Bopp comet passed by Earth, 39 of the Heaven's Gate cult members, including Bo, they began their journey. Bo told them they would be exiting the Earth in 3 groups. And so on March 26th, Group 1 entered their San Diego mansion and consumed applesauce mixed with barbiturates, followed it up with a whole bunch of vodka, and then put a bag over their head and waited for death. Then on March 27th, Group 2 entered the San Diego mansion, knowing full well what they were walking into. They all had specific jobs of how they were going to clean up the mess left from Group 1. They cleaned it up. Then they picked up the Group 1 members and placed them in beds and put a purple cloth over their face before they, Group 2, consumed their own applesauce mixed with barbiturates and put a bag over their head and waited for death. On March 28th, the 3rd group entered the San Diego mansion, and this included Bo, and they did the same cleanup as Group 2. They put the Group 2 deceased members in bed as well, and then they consumed applesauce and barbiturates, followed it up with vodka, bag over their head, waited for death. Bo had given special instructions to 2 of the members that were within that 3rd group to wait until he had exited Earth and take special care to put him in a specific bed, organized a certain way, and then when they consumed their own applesauce and barbiturates followed up with vodka, they should do that in their bed because they're the last 2. There's nobody else to move them. When a former cult member stopped by the San Diego mansion to check in on the cult, they went inside not knowing what they were up to and found all 39 cult members deceased, laying in bunk beds, with identical black and white Nike running shoes on their feet with purple shrouds over their bodies, and they were all wearing matching armbands that read Heaven's Gate Away Team. Just hours before they exited the Earth, each of the groups would perform exit interviews where they would record themselves talking about why they were doing this, why it was important, and what they expected on the other side. They are remarkably cheerful and happy considering what they all know they are about to do. Here are some highlights from those exit interviews.
Okay, we have Thursody with us, and I believe that you chose the name Thursody because you wanted to be reminded of your thirst for next level knowledge. Is that correct?
That's right. I know my vehicle's, or this vehicle that I'm wearing, pretty nervous, pretty scared. Some may say, well, boy, it's quite a irreversible step.
This isn't a troubling circumstance. Don't take it as that. It's just a gateway, just a call.
Okay, thank you.
Now you're going to find this old crummy vehicle in a bunk someplace that I'll be going. I'll probably be watching when you check it out and observe your responses and your reaction when you look at these vehicles. And they're all nothing but containers that we've used and board for the short amount of time.
People in the world who thought that I had completely lost my marbles. They're not right.
So that's going to do it, guys. Let me know what you thought of these 3 stories in the comments, and I will pin the best comment at the top of the comments section. If you enjoyed today's stories and you haven't done this already, please offer to make the like button a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but employ a 6-to-1 peanut butter to jelly ratio. Also, please subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. If you want to get in touch with me, you can direct message me on Instagram or on Twitter. My username on both platforms is the same. It's just John Ballin 416. I also have a ton of content over on TikTok where my username is Mr. Ballin. If you have a story suggestion, please submit it to our subreddit just called Mr. Ballin. It's linked in the description below. Whether I see you on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, or YouTube, or some combination, just know that I really appreciate your support. And until next time, guys, that's going to do it. See you.